What's up? How you doing? Beautiful night tonight. Beautiful night. It's a little bit hazy, but it's perfect temperature right now. So I'm gonna do souvlaki chicken. Cut it up right now. Put it on the skewers. Put it on the fire, and eat. Getting a little bit dark here, so. I'm going to cut the pieces small. That way they cook faster, but also, you know, if they're too big, people get tired chewing, apparently. So we cut these like dice or die. You know, I'm a big fan of magic. But I'm always curious to know how the trick is done. But that's where I should put the but. But when I find out, I'm a little bit disappointed. You know, so every trick is like that. The second you find out how it's done, you're like, oh, that's how they do it. Big deal. You always want it to be real magic, but there's no such thing. No such thing. Even things like haunted places. I know I don't want to disappoint anybody, but no such thing. Those are all man-made stories. Man-made stories. You always run into the person who says, "Oh, but you know, maybe the rest of them are." But I have one that actually is true. It's not. It's not. It's always people involved. You know, they had a movie many years ago, Amityville Horror, and they presented it, you know, like true story. It was not. Totally made up. Totally made up. And it was made up, I guess the person who had bought the house was in debt. So they wanted to come up with something to make money, and him and his lawyer, this is how the story goes, him and his lawyer over a few bottles of wine came up with this fantastic story that the house was haunted. It wasn't. Just a regular house. No such thing. Now, you could go there, Amityville, New York, and find this place. They've changed it. So it's a little more difficult to find, unless you have the address. But I guess they changed the windows, those windows that look like eyes of the house. All these things, all of them, have a logical explanation. And usually, it's human beings creating the effects. You know, I remember many years ago, I was a kid. There was this place not too far from my house, and everybody would say the statues are missing their arms and blood is coming out of the arms. Well, you hear something like that, automatically you know it's not true. So one night, out of curiosity, we went there. And it was all normal. No blood, nothing like that. Just made up, you know, stories. People do that. They get the attention, you know, even if it's indirect attention, they enjoy it. But you will never find any case that's true where a person was possessed or, you know, the house is haunted or something like that. There's always a logical explanation other than the supernatural. Now, in the old days, they would bring in a priest to remove the evil spirit. Problem is that, you know, they didn't understand mental health in those years, and things today that we diagnose as mental illness, back then, they thought were evil spirits. Some people still do. You know, some people still do. And, you know, people say, well, if it wasn't evil spirits, then how did the person get better after? And there's something very powerful called the placebo effect. Everybody knows that, especially if you're doing research. When they were testing minoxidil, Rogaine, they did a double-blind study. That means that neither the patient nor the researcher knew who was getting the real drug when they were testing him, because they didn't want the researcher to influence the outcome. And even with Rogaine, the mind was able to, you know, in certain patients, regrow hair, even though they were receiving a placebo, the fake drug. You know, so if the mind can do that, you know, the other stuff is easy. The only thing nobody has ever done, supernatural, or wherever you want to put the claim, has never, ever, ever helped an amputee regrow a limb or a missing eye or something like that. Never. Has never happened. Even Scooby-Doo, which I keep mentioning, had it right. They knew, the writers knew, that anytime there's a situation where a house is haunted or some kind of, you know, story like that, it's always a human being behind it. Houdini was a master at exposing seance fraud. It's all fraud. Because being a magician himself, he knew how it was done, so he exposed it. But hey, if you have the will to believe in that kind of stuff, you'll believe anything. So, rule of thumb, there's always a logical explanation. We don't live in that kind of world. Human beings have created that kind of world with their imagination, but we don't live in that kind of world in reality. I was watching the news, that Singapore airliner that hit turbulence. It's a crazy, crazy turbulence to be thrown around like that. I think one person actually died of a heart attack or something. You know, I don't know, you know, why they can't go around it. It's too much money rather than being thrown around like that. It's a dog. I can't wait till planes are a little bit faster. You know, I'm not talking about, you know, 10,000 miles an hour, but you know, right now they do about 600, 625 around there. 850, 900, that would be good. I'd like to go to Japan someday, but I'd like to get there in 4 hours. Sit in a plane too long, it's like, starts getting to you, you know, it's like being on a Greyhound for a couple hours after. Is that it? Is there more? I think that's it. chicken is cold. Yeah, I mean, I love flying. I enjoy it, you know, but after a few hours of being up there, you're like, okay, now what? I have taken, I mean, you know, obviously the plane is the best way to travel, but I've taken Greyhound, my share of Greyhound. I've done a lot of Greyhound traveling when I was younger. I have taken Amtrak cross country. Wasn't that bad, Amtrak. But I guess, you know, if you want to, I wanted to see places, so I took that. But after a while, you know, you're back on that chair. You know, if you want to get there, you can't beat a plane, obviously. But even that, you know, I mean, we've been traveling 550, 600 miles an hour now for a very long time. They can't improve that? No. You think like some of these competitors, like Airbus, would say, okay, Boeing is doing 600. Why don't we do like 675 and then advertise, you know, we're like an airliner with sneakers. You know, we're faster than Boeing. Then people would come to you. I'd go, if somebody told me that an airliner was like 100 miles per hour faster, I would go to that airliner because 100 miles an hour adds up. You know, a little bit here, a little bit there, you arrive quicker. Anyway, I'm going to go rinse this, then I'm going to add stuff. I'll be right back. All right. Now, I'm going to add, I washed my hands, so, you know, chicken you have to wash often, but, so I have some virgin olive oil, extra virgin, Costarina again. So, I have pepper. I didn't bring pepper. Oregano. It's a lot of chicken, so you need a bit of oregano. Salt. More than salt this time again. And for color, a little bit of color, use some organic paprika. A little bit. And I forgot the pepper. Well, I'm gonna go get pepper in my mixing stick. I'll be right back. All right, I got the pepper here. Okay, so It's not, you know, a lot. It's a lot of chicken, so. Well, you got to use the hands, so I have to stand for this. Alright, I'm back. Everything's all set. Salt, pepper, oregano, paprika. Maybe I'll put a little garlic. I'll do it on the skewers. So, you know, these are decent skewers, but I'm kind of like not too hot on them, you know. They're all right, but anyway, let's begin the process here. Like traveling, like I said, but the planes, they got to speed them up. Speed them up a little bit, you know. They do 650, 850. That sounds about right. And if you're worried about the sonic boom that happens when you hit the speed of sound, well, you got to work on the design then. There are designs being worked on as we speak. As I skewer these, they're working on designs that will not have that effect by causing, I guess, the shock wave to disperse. But let's say they can't do that. Then, like if you're flying from a coastal city, you go out into the ocean, I don't know, 100 miles, not that far, a few minutes. That seems about heavy enough. So then you go full speed, you allow the shock wave out there. I mean, they'll still hear a little bit, but so what? Or if you're flying over land, just go, you know, 5 miles below the sound barrier. And then when you're flying over the Pacific or Atlantic or any other ocean, go full speed. But my dream has always been to have a surprise trip. Like somebody takes me somewhere, but it's a surprise. You know, they give me earmuffs so I can't hear what's being said. Maybe they give me a blindfold so I can't read it up on the wall, up on the screen. And then I get on the plane. I will not cheat. I will not take the blinders off. And then I land in some, you know, foreign land. Like, for example, Mongolia. And then I'm like, wow, where am I? And they say, I don't know, you got to figure it out. And it turns out I'm in Mongolia. That's just an example. It doesn't have to be Mongolia. It could be Ethiopia. I'm a fan of Ethiopia. Good coffee there. Beautiful scenery. I don't know, maybe now there's a war going on, I think. The Congo would be another good location. Drop me off there. See how Tarzan could live there. always been fascinated with the jungle because I'm a fan of Tarzan. And when I was a kid, I thought it was an extra letter in there, Tarzan. I thought it was Tarzan. Then I looked at it one day, I was reading it, and I go, oh, it's Tarzan. Johnny Wise Mueller. Some people say Johnny Wise Miller. Either way, he's my favorite Tarzan. But he played the Tarzan that, you know, my father liked, and I liked too. The Tarzan who was not educated. But when you see the other Tarzan movies, I guess he lived in England for a while, so he was educated. Yeah, I don't know. I like the whole thing where he's raised by apes and he doesn't go into civilization. So he's kind of like a primitive man. He's like Rambo in the jungle. And then he's got the primitive boy, the son, or I guess he's adopted. I think in the Weissmuller one, I think he's adopted. One I really like was the one where he goes to New York, and then he's being chased by the cops, and he does what he can. He jumps off of the Brooklyn Bridge into the Hudson River. But it's funny when you see that, you can tell it's like a little statue of Tarzan. It's some miniature thing that's falling. It's not him, because he wouldn't make that. Plus he's too stiff. They get heavy, they go right into your hand. But yeah, I love Tarzan. Had that yell that he would do, which I know Weissmuller would say it was him doing that. No, it's not. You could tell it's multiple voices, first of all. So you can't do that no matter what. I mean, if you could do that, Pavarotti would have been starting the show off with that. But you can't. It's a manipulation. I think it's played forward, and then they do a reverse, and then there's another voice that does the thing, whatever that is. And somehow the animals in the jungle know. They start coming to him to help. It's like he's in trouble again. Let's save him. King of the jungle. The lion. Yeah. I'm just gonna say these skewers, they're very thin and they're not enjoyable. I ran out of propane last time, and then this time I remembered that I needed propane, so I had to go get some. Dog barking there. Yeah, I'd like to go, different places on the planet that are out of reach for your average human. Like, for example, Antarctica. Love to go there. Maybe, do a little hike around there. Would love to go to Point Nemo. Would love to go to the Arctic Circle, North Pole area. I would like to go to Siberia. Interesting people there. Very, very rugged people. You look at, like athletes, American athletes, they play football or they box or they, UFC. They're nothing compared to people that have to live off the land and survive. They're nothing compared to that. You see people that are survivors that have to hunt in order for their kids to be fed. That's where you see toughness. Just because you're an athlete, big deal. In high school, I was never a fan, and maybe to this day, of the in general. There was some that were okay, but the athletes, very, in high school, very, very conceited. Snobs. I went to high school with somebody who, became a bit famous in sports. I'm not going to name him for obvious reasons, it's many years ago now, so maybe he's different now. But either way, I wouldn't name him. But anyway, so I had him in a class of mine, and he was the biggest vomit bag, very conceited, full of himself. And, nobody cared. I couldn't care even less than I cared back then that he played in a sport. But he was a vomit bag. It's a funny thing. I told him that one time, and then he kind of changed. He stopped doing that stuff, that snobby stuff. But yeah, could care less that you're an athlete. I don't hate these people, but I just, I don't glorify them either. Big fan of boxing. Big fan. When I say big fan, I'm big fan. And these days I appreciate the UFC. I appreciate that sport. But I will say that, also I enjoy basketball and hopscotch. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. But they're big. They're not 8 small ones. So I'm going to go wash my hands. I shall be back.